Menopause Monday, friends. Today I am going to be discussing again. I did a previous episode on hot flashes before, but today I'm going to tie in more to how our adrenals work, because there is so much research out there now pointing to the fact that the symptoms that we get through our menopausal years are more related to the health of our adrenal glands than they are related necessarily to the fact that our ovaries are not producing estrogen and progesterone like they used to do during our childbearing years. So, and I'm also going to just add a little bit onto that about why we gain fat, particularly around the middle. Excuse me if I sound hoarse, I'm fighting off a cold and I'm determined to fight it off. So Leah, if you're watching, this is for you. Thank you for your suggestion. It's a great one. And hot flashes are probably the most common symptom that most of us struggle with. Certainly I didn't actually realise I was perimenopausal until I worked it out myself because the doctor said I was too young to be going through menopause, and that was when I was my mid-30s, I suppose. Mid to sort of 35 to 37. I used to literally wake up in the night drenched. It was awful, and that was all my hot flashes. And it wasn't until I sort of went through the menopause myself and thought started looking. I love learning. There's so much conflicting evidence out there, and doctors don't necessarily promote a natural way through the menopause. People seem to say, or the medical profession seem to say, well, there's bioidentical or there's HRT, and there are various benefits for doing this and using that. But at the end of the day, they're just treating the symptoms. They're not actually treating the root cause of what's causing these in the first place. And when you look at it, I mean, just Google it, there's so much research on it. It's absolutely fascinating how closely our adrenal glands are associated with the symptoms that we get when we go through perimenopause and obviously postmenopause. Our actual menopause is just one day, in case you didn't know that already. So you're either perimenopausal, you're before symptoms, or you're perimenopausal in the run-up. And then the menopause is literally just one day, which signifies 12 months since you had your last period, and thereafter you are postmenopausal. So when we're born, we have about a million eggs, and as we go through puberty, that sort of gets to about 300,000, and then by the time we are sort of adults and with viable eggs left for potential fetuses, we've got around about between sort of 300 and 400 eggs that are of useful value. So once you've laid your last egg, that's it. You're into menopause. And so, just explaining briefly, because it's actually quite scientific. The hypothalamus is deep inside our head, and when we go into the menopause, our ovaries stop producing our sex hormones to such a degree because technically we don't need them anymore. We're at an age, I mean, I went through menopause quite early, but most people, I think the average age is about 52. I'm now 49, and I'm well over it. I'm postmenopausal by a couple of 3 years or so, so long time ago now. And so when the ovaries stop producing our sex hormones, our adrenal glands are specifically there to back up the work of the ovaries. Now, in an optimal lifestyle where we're not bombarded with different types of stress on a daily basis, because of course our adrenal glands release cortisol, they release adrenaline, and in our daily stressy environments these days, our adrenals are tired because they're constantly responding to stress. They're constantly pumping out cortisol. On a normal daily rhythm, we have high cortisol in the morning, which helps us get out of bed, which is why most of you probably have a hot flush or a hot flash as soon as you wake up, because that's compounded by that burst of cortisol that is designed to make us get out of bed, to motivate us to get up and get on with our day as part of our daily circadian rhythm. And then as the day progresses, those cortisol levels technically drop to prepare us for bedtime and sleep. But obviously, in our day and age nowadays, at 5 p.m., there's nothing to say that your boss doesn't walk through the door. You're getting ready to go home. They say, no, there's no way you can go home now because we've got to there's a deadline which needs to be finished by 9 p.m. tonight, and you're starving, and you've got kids that are waiting for you at home, and the whole stress. I mean, it's just what happens to us on a daily basis that mounts up. But that causes us to release again cortisol, and eventually our adrenal glands. You don't necessarily need to be in adrenal fatigue. I mean, that really is the extreme end of the scale. But if your adrenal glands are tired, that's when you are more likely to get the symptoms of what we call menopausal symptoms. But really, it's the fact that your adrenal glands haven't got sufficient oomph in them to respond to the messages from the hypothalamus. Also, the hypothalamus helps us uh, keep our heart rhythm normal. It helps with temperature control. So there's also reports out there that say that when we go through into our menopause, the sort of the buffer zone, so what our brain perceives as not too hot and not too cold, gets reduced. So that's why all of a sudden you might have a hot flash or a hot flush. It's because that's the body's natural mechanism in order to cool us down. So, all our blood vessels, they dilate on the surface of the skin. We go into a sweat, which is the body trying to cool itself down really, really fast, because that sort of buffer zone has been reduced so much. And so, really, the good news is it can all be taken into account or taken control of by lifestyle changes. There are no major sort of remedies out there. It's just a matter of managing our stress better. And sometimes that's going to involve more stress to manage our stress, because that might involve extricating yourself from a toxic relationship, and that's going to be stressful in itself, particularly if you're emotionally tied but it's unhealthy for you. It might involve house move. It might involve working out finances if you're in an unhealthy marriage and you need to get out of it. But I think at the end of the day, you've got to work out what is better for the long-term health of you and perhaps your children, if you've got kids as well, so that the problem is, it's as stressful to stay stuck as it is to make the move sometimes. And so at least if you're making those changes, you've got sunlight on the horizon, even though you might not be able to see it straight away, and it might be a bit scary. But what is the price of staying stuck in a toxic relationship? I mean, that's obviously pretty extreme. I'm not suggesting go out and get divorced. But there are a lot of people that I see in my therapy room who are stuck in very unhappy marriages, and that is just so bad for your long-term mental and physical health. And I think also through the menopause, we're dealing with so many changes. Our kids are leaving home, we're becoming empty nesters, which is hard in itself. I'm an empty nester, and it's tough. Your roles are being defined within the relationship because you've got the children aren't there to dilute it anymore. So, or to be the reason for the centre of attention, and you've almost got to sort of rediscover each other again. So, menopause and the time of life can bring up so many different issues and challenges for us. And lifestyle, I mean, things like eating healthy, sugar, cut sugar out. I mean, I tend to say reduce your sugar, but I think if we really want to live healthy and optimal, fulfilling life, and you want to reduce your menopausal symptoms, specifically things like hot flashes and joint pain and irritability, you are going to make such a massive difference to yourself if you just cut out refined carbohydrates. I'm not suggesting go keto, and there are a lot of benefits for a keto diet. I think personally it's tough to stay on long term, but some people do, and there are great results on keto diets. But I am suggesting reduce your refined carbs and ideally cut out sugars, except for maybe the odd occasional treat. And that really means preparing your own food at home, because a lot of the shop bought prepared stuff, even if it says healthy on the label, generally it's not. So if you're preparing it yourself at home, you know exactly what it's got in it. Stop adding sugar to your drinks. You don't need it. Inform yourself. If you're drinking things like orange juice, it's so full of sugar. honestly, it's just so full of sugar. Have a look at the back of the packet. It's just like cram pack of sugar. Just eat an orange. It's natural. You'll get all the other fiber and things like that that you need to maintain healthy blood sugar levels. Because the problem is, it doesn't matter what that stress comes from, whether it's nutritional stress, whether it's you're about to be eaten by a tiger. Stress is stress, and the body responds to the variety of stresses in the same way, and that is by releasing more cortisol. And when our cortisol spikes, our blood sugar spikes, because the body technically needs the sugar in our blood so that we can get away fast, because we're in that fight and flight response, which makes our insulin spike. And insulin is our fat storing hormone, which then brings the whole sort of that sort of myriad of chemical reactions to the result of belly fat. Because fat around our belly, for a start, has 4 times the amount of receptors for cortisol than any other fat cells in our body. So technically that's why, or one of the reasons why, we tend to get fat around our belly, particularly through menopause and middle age. The other reason is it's partly linked to the fight and flight response, is the fact that all our vital hormones are stored around our core. And so in times of need, we want energy deposits close to our vital organs, because it saves energy. If we haven't got if we had fat fingers, it's a long journey when we're trying to survive, to get fat and energy from our fingers into our vital organs. So that's another reason why we tend to get fatter around our middle. So you'll be very conscious about refined carbohydrates and sugars. Try and eat more whole grains if you do eat grains. Eat lots of green leafy vegetables. They're great for your blood sugar. They're great for fiber. If you're constipated, again, that's going to cause stress to the body. You're putting toxins staying within the system longer than they should do. So make sure you're drinking, so lots of green leafy vegetables, drink lots of water. Sleep is incredibly important. Sleep, I mean, we all need different amounts of sleep, but most of us need between sort of 7 and 9 hours. If you're in adrenal fatigue, you might need to go to bed for 3 days and just rest, because when you're really in fatigue, your body's literally breaking down, and you do need to just take that time away and just sleep. If you can physically sleep, you probably need to sleep. Most of us, you've had like 7, 8 or 9 hours and we're ready to get up. You could lie there, but you probably won't sleep again. But adrenal fatigue, you do need to prioritize sleep as like one of the very first things that you need to do, because it just allows your body to start to balance things out and just start to recover. That's when our cellular recovery happens, is during our sleeping hours. And also it's when we burn up most of our fat. During our sleeping hours is when you lose most of your weight. So prioritize sleep. Also, when you are tired, your cortisol spikes again, and also it makes us then crave sugary and salty foods, which again are going to have a negative knock-on effect to our body. So it's really, it's so interrelated. Boron is also something that I would suggest that boron-rich foods. Now, boron's really good for the body. It's a trace mineral, but specifically through menopause, it helps us to regulate our estrogen levels. And foods rich in boron are things like raisins, dates. I love dates. In fact, dates I eat every day as a healthy snack. Nuts, so cashews, almonds, Brazil nuts, walnuts. Those sorts of things are, again, quite high in boron. I think you need 3 milligrams a day approximately of an ideal amount of boron. Avocados, potatoes, lentils, chickpeas, those sorts of things are pretty good with boron. And the more I research sort of adrenals and menopause, and boron keeps popping up, and I just sort of ignored it pretty much, because I have a variety of adaptogen herbs on a daily basis, which I'm also going to mention because I absolutely swear by them. But boron keeps popping up, and when I saw that it's in a lot of nuts and in a lot of dates, I mean, I just thought, yay, brilliant, because I have dates and nuts as a sort of like a mid-afternoon snack. It's also really important to make sure that you're eating regularly, sort of I eat every 2.5 to 3 hours, and I have to say I've had hardly any menopausal symptoms now. As soon as I realised the link to sort of stress, regular food, sugar, my hot flushes went way down. I have one normally in the morning when I wake up, and I may have another during the day if I'm either hungry or thirsty. I'd also suggest to track, even if you just track your food and drink for, I don't know, say 5 days, it'll give you a really precise picture of what you've eaten and drunken or not had prior to a hot flash or irritability. You know, I think also when we're in such a sort of sensitive stress response, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed and stressy and irritable and tearful. Again, that's all tied down to your adrenal glands. It's not really related to the menopause, it's more the adrenals. So keep a track of what you're eating, what you're drinking, and when you're you're having responses that you don't necessarily want to have, and you will see that there's a pattern that becomes very, very evident. It's absolutely fascinating when you do it. And so what the other thing I would say is make sure that you make time for yourself. So I would say exercise. We're designed to move. The body needs to move. It also helps to gobble up stress hormones. It also releases feel-good hormones. So, hey Tiff, lovely to see you. So if you're exercise, I think it depends where you're at on that stress scale. If you're incredibly stressed, if you're finding you're feeling really irritable, if you're really struggling with sleep, I would exercise, do something like yoga or Pilates, or ask me for the free bar blend sample workout that I've got, because that is based upon bar and Pilates and yoga and a little bit of cardio, but not too much. Hi Beth, I wonder if I could ask you to send me. Oh Beth, no, I don't think I want to do that. Thank you very much. So just make sure that you're doing something that is calming but active. If you are finding yourself feeling really stressed and very irritated. Otherwise, if you're fitter and if you're used to doing more exercise, go for it. I think if you can combine a combination of, you want ideally strength and weight bearing exercises, because to maintain our bone strength and also as you get older you get muscle atrophy quicker, which means the weakening of the muscle. So ideally incorporating strength exercises, which will help to improve the density of your bones, combined with a little bit of HIIT exercise, helps to gobble up the stress hormones and keeps your heart healthy. So if you're sort of mid-level through the menopause, go for something that's got a good variety of exercises, including strength training, because that is incredibly important. And the adaptogen herbs. Now, adaptogen herbs they're quite remarkable. Again, there's so much more evidence out there pointing to the benefit of them. I mean, I have 8 every day. They form part of a shake that I have. They are ashwagandha, cordyceps, astragalus or astragalus, I'm never sure how they say it, maytake, reishi, maca, and Shisandra is another one. And they all essentially, I mean, they've all got slightly different properties, but on the whole, they help combat fatigue, they give you energy. Most of them help with sexual performance as well, because of the blood flow. They help with infertility. They help to balance estrogen and testosterone in men. They will help improve your sperm count. What else do they do? They are, did I say they're anti-inflammatory? They're anti-cancer, a lot of them are. Cordyceps is one of my favourites because it's this tiny, it grows out of the back of a dead caterpillar. It's like this tiny little fungal critter, and but it's incredibly powerful. And I think it's the 1993 Chinese National Championships. I think the female runners broke 9 world records, and they were obviously all tested for doping and things. And their trainer just said that the only thing they've done or added is cordyceps. And because it increases your VO2 max, so your potential, the way you can transport oxygen around the body, gives you more energy. And it was down to cordyceps why they were so successful. So, that is my favourite adaptogen herb that I take, just because of the story around it. I think it's fantastic. And it's a $1 billion industry now. It's absolutely, because it's such a powerful little adaptogenic herb. But they essentially help to regulate our cortisol level. So if you're like in the case of adrenal fatigue, where you're not producing enough cortisol now because your adrenal glands are so tired they can't produce cortisol. And cortisol is really important in the body. We do need it. It's not just this stressy thing. It's anti-inflammatory. It keeps our immune system working well. It's really, really important. So during adrenal fatigue, you're not making enough cortisol. Well, adaptogen herbs will help to regulate the cortisol levels, and they'll help to bring it up. And if you've got too much cortisol, they'll help to bring it down. And same with your hormones. If you when we go through the menopause, our progesterone tends to fall off faster than our estrogen does. So although they're both lower, we tend to have estrogen dominance. Well, the adaptogen herbs help to balance all that as well. So they're just really important for our mental and our physical health. They've been studied with to help people combat depression even. I mean, they are real powerhouses. So certainly look into adaptogen herbs. I swear by them, and I do take them daily. So I think that's pretty much it. Avoid I mean, some people get hot flashes when they eat spicy foods. Some people get hot flashes when they drink caffeine. And I think that's also related to probably how you slept the day before, and a combination of factors. I know that if I eat spicy foods, I had a vindaloo last night and I've hardly had any hot flashes at all. But not long ago I had a curry, and then all night long I had hot flashes, which was, for me, was really remarkable. I haven't had that many for ages, and I just put it down to the spices. But clearly it wasn't just the spices. So it's a combination of factors that will have, result in different symptoms that you're feeling. But it all boils down to how you manage your stress, essentially. If you can get your stress under control, if you can make a few lifestyle changes and stress, so environmental stress, make sure you're sleeping well enough, make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that support you and lift you up and don't knock you down, and make sure that you're eating healthily, make sure you're drinking enough water so that your body's hydrated. That combination of factors is going to help to support your adrenal glands, which will then help you navigate the fact that your ovaries aren't producing your sex hormones as much as they used to be doing. So and then that all ties into how cortisol then affects our blood sugars, which affects our insulin, which affects the fact that we then hold fat around our belly. So it all boils down to you supporting your adrenal health at the end of the day. So I hope that's been helpful. Leah, I hope you've watched this. I hope you found it helpful. And I will dive into weight retention and menopause in more detail. But I wanted to touch on sort of the basics of it in this one, because I think it's, you just think, why is my belly getting fatter? And it is down to cortisol and insulin, and the fact that we have all those receptors around our belly fat for cortisol. So if you get your stress in order, you're going to get through the menopause a lot easier, and life's just going to be so much better anyway. So if you need to make those changes, get on and make those changes. So I hope this has been helpful, and I will catch you soon. Thank you for joining me.